Okay, so I'm here with Matt Dornacker. Matt and I went to Israel, Palestine, September 3rd through the 11th. And we just want to share with our church community some of the stuff that we heard, some of the stuff that we saw, and just what God showed us, what God spoke to us about, what our missionaries are doing there, what God is already doing there through the people who are from there, and also through the international workers from the alliance that we support. So I'll give a quick overview, and then Matt, you can kind of jump in if I missed anything. I'll just give a quick brief overview of what we did, but we don't want to just talk about information. We want to just really get to the heart of like what really struck each of us. We flew out Wednesday the 3rd. We basically arrived on the 4th, and the house that we stayed in was a missions house that our denomination has owned for a long time. I think it goes back to like the 1800s,
Right,
right?
right, right, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Something crazy like that. Yeah.
So there's a mission house in the middle of Jerusalem where we stayed. We stayed on the bottom floor of this mission house. It kind of served as a bomb shelter just in case. So Thursday, yeah, we stayed around Jerusalem and just kind of got an overview and met some of the other workers who live there, who are from the CMA. Friday, we went into Bethlehem, and we saw the Church of the Nativity, where they believe Jesus was born. We saw Bethlehem Bible College, visited there, saw like the ministries that they have there for Arab speakers. It's a Bible college predominantly for Arab speakers. They want to raise them up and send them out. Then we went to this refugee camp where one of our workers lives, and he's trying to build a relationship, and it's basically all Muslims who live in this refugee camp. And we heard from these Muslim Palestinians about their perspective on things. We took a tour of the refugee camp, and then we ended that day with a church service, um, a Palestinian Arab speaking church service, which was really interesting. We did not understand anything, but we had translators in our ear, which was interesting. So that was a packed Friday. Saturday we saw a Chinese ministry. We were there's a Chinese church in Tel Aviv, Israel, that we visited. There was I spoke at a Chinese church. Matt went with one of our pastors, state pastors, who's Chinese. He went and spoke. Where did he speak? Who did he speak to?
It was like another like offshoot of like the same church, but it was congregation was primarily Chinese construction workers.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
yeah.
So that was Sunday or Saturday with the Chinese community. Sunday we stayed around Jerusalem. We went to a church where our main partners, Jeff and Kate, are part of this church in Jerusalem. We went there. It's also in Arabic, but it was translated for us. We Jeff Hoops, who's an American dude, preached in Arabic, which was really cool to see. Um, and then we spent the afternoon doing some sightseeing, seeing the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, um, doing some, shopping for souvenirs and that kind of thing, but walking around, seeing the sights a little bit more. Monday, we were back in Tel Aviv to see a Jewish Christian, Sergey, and a Arab Christian named um, Jamil, and what they do together. They serve, they oversee these detox homes, these homes for people who are addicts, for people who have been abused. And they're planting a church together. And so we saw that the site where they're going to be starting this church in a building. Then we went to the Mediterranean Sea Monday night to and check that out, just to dive in there. Um, Tuesday, we were in a town called Ramallah, back in the West Bank. We went to a day center where it's run by Christians, but it serves disabled children of Muslim families, Muslim Palestinian families in the West Bank. So we got to hear how that got started. We got to play with some of the kids. We had lunch with them. And then we went home and just had dinner that night at a nice restaurant. Um, and the last day, Wednesday, was we stayed around Jerusalem and we did a little more sightseeing, went to Hezekiah's tunnel. We went to a garden tomb where some people think Jesus rose from the dead there. Other people think it was the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. There's some debate. Um, and then I think Thursday we went home. So that's an overview of what we did. Did I miss anything, Matt?
I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
that was a good overview.
Now we want to just get to like what really stood out to us. So Matt, what was like the most moving, eye-opening parts for you? If you could just list one or two.
Um, it's hard for me to um begin to talk about like because obviously like all like the historical stuff and the structures and and that are thousands of years old are like really cool and all that. But that seemed to be drowned out for me by the just the cultural dynamic and the tension, um, which going into Israel was something I even though being very ignorant as to the cultural dynamic, that was something I, had been anticipating just because of it's all that you hear on the news and everything.
Yeah.
But what so it was just interesting just being exposed more closely to all of that stuff. Um and then also what was surprising in the midst of that as well was what God is doing in the midst of all of that, because I feel like that's something we also don't see on the medias either.
Mm,
Something you don't really see on the media in the media or whatever.
yeah.
Um, there's a lot of different things that I feel like was pretty like impactful. Um, yeah, and like different things personally, I felt like God was like little things, personally. I felt like the Holy Spirit was sort of um speaking to me with certain things, but I don't know. There's there's a lot, you know what I mean? I'm sure you
Yeah.
kind of feel the same way.
I know. I do. I do. Like for me, I shared this with our group. A, a, a big thing that stood out to me was how significant and powerful and potentially dangerous somebody's story can be. Depending on where you pick up the story in terms of history, Palestinians and Jewish people can both make the case that they were victims of injustice and oppression. I mean, if you just talk to a Muslim Palestinian family who had a home in Israel in 1948 and they lost it, if you just picked up the story there, then you can feel very sorry for what happened to their family. And if you um, talk to a Jewish person and you just picked up their story and their family story um, prior to 1948, or just in the last 20 years, there's anywhere you can pick on the timeline, somebody can make the case, but there's these narratives and I shouldn't even say both sides because it wasn't just Palestinians and Jews. I was even telling your brother this. It was like Palestinians from West Bank and then Palestinians from Gaza. They're run by different groups.
Yep.
Fatah in the West Bank and Hamas in Gaza. And those two groups have put out hits on each other and there's been
Right.
wars between them. And Palestinian Christians,
Yep.
there's there's some walls between the Palestinian Muslims and the Palestinian Christians. There's some trust
Right.
issues there. Um, like so that like just like the stories run so deep, they run so far back, and things have only been stirred up even more in the last couple years. And so we've got missionaries over there, we've got workers over there, um, who are trying to build bridges, and they are having a hard time. And there's
Mm,
people who live there who are believers in Jesus, and they're trying to build bridges, and they're having a hard time, between Christian Jews and Christian Palestinians. Like, building that bridge is a hard thing to do,
mm,
because they see scripture differently. They see the war differently. And but I was really blessed by Sergey and Jamil, and how well they're working together. And how Sergey has a brother who's serving in the IDF and in Gaza, fighting for Israel in Gaza. Jamil has family members who died in Gaza as a result of the war, and yet they are not holding it against each other. They're working together. That's just one example of the power of the gospel, to unite, to tear down walls. Um, but it's one example that needs to be multiplied, because it's so needed there. Um, so that was one thing that struck me while there. Like, as a like overall, it was just like, wow, wow, the gospel story has to be the story that we find our identity in. Otherwise, we're just
yeah,
tempted to stick to our sides.
right. Yeah.
Was there a particular day or visit that you really enjoyed?
I enjoyed two things that I guess two sort of ministries that we visited. Um, that stood out were one of them being uh, Sergey and Jamil, meeting them and just getting to hear their story, just like similarly to what you were just sharing. And that was like something that was like pretty impactful for me, and just like something that was like you're saying, it's like more people needing to find that identity in the gospel that allows them to build those bridges. Especially because just a couple of days before that, we had been talking to Jeff, and he had been sharing how, the one of the issues over there being even the tension in Christians themselves over there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
just a couple of days before that. So then it was like, especially the um Palestinian Christians and the Israeli Christians. So it was really just cool to see Jamil and Sergey and how they just view themselves as brothers and really find their identities in the gospel, like what you were saying, and put and in doing that, those things that, the rest of the culture is divided by, see that it all takes a back seat to their new identities that they found. So that was like really cool to see, and it was like, okay, I see what God's doing here, and you can see how that can continually um happen. So that was just cool to see and eye-opening,
mm,
but also the I'm not even I forget exactly what they referred to it as, but like the center in Ramallah where they
yeah.
did where they had the where basically they were helping the special needs kids with occupational therapists and speech pathologists and just different therapies in caring for the kids in that area, the kids that need tending to. It was a very practical application of the just the love of Jesus, and it was that love was it was like made evident in the guy Johnny who like runs, basically I think he runs like that center. But
Johnny, yeah, Johnny
yeah,
runs that center.
right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was just cool to see, um, because he's a Christian, and I think he was sharing that like the not everyone that goes there and the kids that go there are Christian. I think some of them may be Muslim. Um, but he had been sharing that they know that they're Christian, or they know that he's Christian. And they still allow their kids to go there and
Yeah. Yeah. That's
therapy.
pretty incredible.
Right. As you can imagine, like in a culture where there is a lot of opposition and hatred and
Yeah.
uh just and that being the presence of like there being like a darkness in all of that, how like something like just like a very and another thing that I think that's like sort of worth sharing is like in the therapy, it wasn't just like a like the love that was shown towards these kids was evident in this like center. It wasn't just like, oh,
Yeah.
the kids just come here and they get therapy and whatever. Um, and then they're in the door and out the door, they get the therapy and they're out. It seemed to be a place where like I think there was a story about a kid who just basically like can't wait and for the therapy place to be open. Like he sits there and watches, and as soon as the place is open, she or I think it might have been a she goes over there to like go in because she knows she's going to be, cared for and loved on and all of that. And so like in the midst of like this like dark cultural um or just like tension filled culture, I think it's like a place where there's the love of Jesus is being shown practically in a very where you can tell these people care. And I think that's because people could say love and they love this, but if they don't have like this evidence of actually caring, then it's just a lot of lip service. But when you can see people actually caring, um,
Yeah.
like Johnny, there's like it's like a bright, it's a light in the midst of a darker
Yeah.
place. So
Yeah. Yeah. Johnny was really fired up about those kids. I mean, you could
right,
just tell he had such a burden for those kids, taking care of those kids. And the fact that Muslim families are sending their kids to a day camp that they know is run by Christians says a lot.
yeah,
It's pretty inspiring. I was also struck by just how many people over there have different burdens. Like they have holy burdens for different
right,
kinds of
yes, yeah,
hurts. Kevin, who is a kid from Chicago, he's part of the Christian Missionary Alliance. He's got a burden for the refugees who live in that refugee camp in particular. Very few people, very few Christians in general are living there. And here's this like white dude from America living there, serving, connecting with a family, and just trying to build a bridge. He's got a burden for them. Johnny has the burden for the day camp and the children with disabilities. Sergey and Jamil, have a burden for people who are down and out, who are addicts, who have been victims of domestic violence. And everybody's just doing their part in the midst of this, grand kind of global crisis happening. They're just doing their part to
mm,
serve the least of these.
mm,
That's what challenged me, coming back, just like there's so many things going on that we want to fix, or that we think we need to have an opinion about. The American government should do this or that. And I was just struck by like, what has God given me a holy burden for? And just focus on that and be faithful with
mm,
that. Um, Sergey and Jamil didn't know what needed to be done with the crisis over there. When I talked to what was his name? The dean at the college. Um, when I was asking him about what he thought the Israeli government, how they should have responded with October 7th, he didn't have a thorough answer, but he just feels called to raise up Arab speaking Christians who know the Bible and can go
right,
out and make a difference in the West Bank and around the world, since people are taking classes online. Um, these guys didn't have answers for everything. They weren't like know-it-alls. They were just like, there's just a lot of
mm,
pain. They wanted us to know the pain, but they weren't saying take our side. They were just saying just be aware of how difficult it is. Be praying for us, but this is what God is doing. Like they were just so excited to share. This is what
mm.
God is doing here. Like God is there.
And I feel like this works a lot of the times when you go on like missions trips, or if you go somewhere, like what you don't see on the media when you go into these places, what they're not sharing with you on the media is like, and when you go in and what you're like exposed to and what you can see is that God is actually moving in these areas, and he is actually doing things, and he is at work.
Did you walk away, come back to America with any like challenge in yourself? Like, okay, the way they did this, I want to implement that into my everyday life.
Something that I had just been thinking about. Um, like it's complicated over there, and as far as being Christians and having a being filled with the love of Jesus to the point where you feel a holy burden to desire to want to share Jesus. And over there, there's almost like I almost sense this like there was this healthy perspective of because of this dynamic, because of how complicated it is, because of even the division among the Christians themselves. There is no exact formula. There's no thing in my own will or understanding that I can come up with that can begin to solve these issues. And it's like a funnel it's like being funneled into like, okay, and being forced into the reality and the perspective of like a complete and utter dependency on God to 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 do his work. It's like like I've heard this term used before, right? It's like a Red Sea or the Red Sea moment where like there's no other options except God has to do something and split the sea. Like it's a complete dependency on just God to do
Yeah.
something where there's no human formula that's going to solve the issues over there. It's going to be a work of it's going to be a work of God. Um, and when you can like rest in that, I think that there's like a healthy fostering of that over there where there's like, okay, like we need to depend on God over here, and we need to be, um, and you sense this with the workers as well. Like there takes a true leaning into God and abiding in Jesus for and trusting in the authority of him and finding hope in him to know that he can do a work, and we need this continual submission to him and his Holy Spirit to be vessels for him to do that work.
Mm, mm, that's good.
Well, just because like I feel like here in America sometimes we're not always we can be deceived into thinking like, oh, like it's not maybe it I mean it actually it is getting more complicated over here, right?
Mm,
But like maybe
yeah.
not as much as over there, but yeah, I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sort of sense, but it's almost like sometimes it's like, oh, like I can be deceived into thinking like I could do something by my own will and not just like a complete and utter dependency
Mm,
and surrendering and filling of Jesus. Yeah.
yeah. It's good. Yeah. I was just thinking about the family, Chris and Rachel, was it?
Yeah.
Chris and Rachel, they're from the Midwest. They just moved there a couple years ago with their three daughters. And so Jeff and Kate moved there when the kids were really little. So their kids don't really know much else. It's not like they grew up in America and then were moved out of America. But it's tough for Jeff and Kate to raise their three kids there, without a doubt. But Chris and Rachel moved there with their three kids just a couple years ago, and they're older. They're like my kids' ages, and so they were pulled away from friends and
Yeah.
family, grandparents, and so it's like that just felt like such a like wow, they're doing that. Like as as a dad with three kids
Yeah.
who are like so plugged into this area and
Right.
sports and school, and like would we be able to hear God's call and say, you know what, guys, as a family, God's calling us to move out of the country and say goodbye to your grandparents, and we're not going to see them as much.
Yeah.
Like that's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Um, and it just impressed me. Not impressed me like to praise them, but just impressed me like, wow, God does that.
Right.
Like the just the call of the gospel is to come and die, and and we see them happy, like we see them flourishing, we see them laughing and having fun there, and
Yeah.
it's like, and their kids are having fun there. It's like, wow, God like makes up for it. Whatever you
Yeah.
lose when you're obedient to Him, He makes up for it. And so, you know, I know you and Bree, and I know others have talked about possibly feeling called to the mission field in the future. And it just kind of gave me like hope that like, wow, whatever we lose here, God makes up for it.
Hmm.
Even in the tumultuous Middle East, they're filled with joy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, even just one thing, what you just shared, that sort of struck me that I didn't yeah, that struck me is, what do you be able to hear? What do you be able to hear?
Yeah.
Huh.
So as a church, we've been supporting Jeff and Kate Hoops, who are the field directors over there. They oversee many of the international workers. They oversee people who are pastoring churches, people who are involved in other parachurch ministries, like Kevin, who's serving in the refugee camp. They even oversee workers in Jordan, although we didn't get to go to Jordan. Um, we have been supporting them financially. We've been praying for them for the last 6 years, but we have yet to start the short-term trips to go serve there. Um, we have tried a few times, but COVID and then the war stopped us multiple times. We tried like 4 times, and I think only one of the times was because we didn't have enough people on our side able to go. The other 3 times it was COVID and the war. But finally we had a chance to go and kind of get a sense of what's happening, and then kind of now we can plan, okay, this is what we will be doing if we bring our church, people from True Life Church, over there. This is how we can serve. One of the ideas that came up was the day camp in Ramallah, where they serve disabled children. One of the things that Matt and I are talking about is um, Muslim families will send their children to an English camp. They will send their children to a camp to learn English. And so if we were to do a English camp, and Jeff and Kate have had churches come and they've done that in this town of Ramallah, where Muslim families will send their kids to learn English, and they allow them to use the Bible to do it. They'll use the Bible. They know, hey, we're Christians. We're going to use the Bible to teach our kids English, and build relationships and build bridges that way. One of the guys who serves at the day camp wants to do a soccer camp. Would love to do not a soccer camp, but he would love to do more with soccer with older kids. So we thought, what if we do an English camp for everybody, but we zero in on you know, extra activities for the younger kids who are in the day center, but we also do like a soccer part of it, like, you know, like we
Mm.
did here in the States. You know, it was a VBS thing, but there was sports. And so, you know, maybe a week-long Monday through Friday thing where it's they're learning English through the Bible, we're building relationships, and we're doing soccer, and we just kind of see what God does through all that. That's an idea that Matt and I are kicking around. We shared it with Jeff Hoops, and he thought, yeah, this is something for us to keep talking about and figure out. So it's not like confirmed yet that this is what we're gonna do, but that's an idea for a short-term trip. And then if it works, we can do a short-term trip like every year or every other year. So that was one kind of like next step for our church. We'll leave it there, and you'll hear more about our plans for going back there in due time. Matt, thank you for jumping on, buddy.
No problem. I hope I did all right.